It's Super Tuesday, and 3 Republican candidates are stumping for votes, not just in the states holding elections, but inside a convention hall in Washington, D.C. Their target audience, the members of AIPAC, the largest pro-Israel lobby in the U.S. The faces changed, but the message didn't.
We must not allow Iran to have the bomb.
You will stop your nuclear production now.
The red line is now.
Jewish Americans typically have voted for Democratic candidates because of the party's liberal take on social and economic issues. But Republican support for Israel is unwavering and very attractive, which is why on the most important day so far of this election cycle, these candidates have come to AIPAC to ask these delegates for their support. AIPAC's work isn't just at this convention. It's fundraising for candidates and face time with legislators.
I'm going to Capitol Hill because I care about strengthening the U.S.-Israel relationship.
We have to make sure our elected officials from Tennessee, that's where we're from, understand the danger in Iran.
Our message is that containment is not an option with Iran.
These delegates have made their way to the U.S. Capitol to make clear to members of Congress that they must continue their support for Israel and perhaps cement the loyalty of future presidential hopefuls. Rosalind Jordan, Al Jazeera, Washington.
We're joined by Joel Rubin. He's a former analyst of Near East affairs at the U.S. State Department. On Tuesday, Mr. Rubin wrote a piece for the Huffington Post in which he said a war on Iran would be a disaster. And clearly that is the consensus amongst the military establishment here in Washington. President Obama, they're saying that the Republicans are beating the drums of war, but are they that different in their position towards Iran than the president?
The president and the Republicans have many similarities in their policies, strong on sanctions, wanting to see Iran not have a nuclear weapon, but where there's a key divergence is in describing what a red line is. The president has made it clear he does not want an acquisition of a nuclear weapon by Iran, but the Republican candidates are saying that that's not good enough. Military force needs to be a more active option, needs to be pushed forward into the dialogue, and that it should be considered even with capabilities.
Well, even with the frontrunner, Mitt Romney, he seemed to be simply diplomacy with a military option on the table, more aid to Israel. That seemed pretty almost identical to President Obama there.
Well, in action, yes, there is very much similar, but it's intriguing how the presidential candidates, Mitt Romney, Rick Santorum, Newt Gingrich, are saying that Obama is not doing enough, trying to ratchet up the pressure for a military option. And Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, also just called for authorizing military force as a direct Senate action. So it really is driving up the rhetoric.
Rick Santorum was interesting there. He said his demand was Iran stops all nuclear production now, open all nuclear facilities to inspection to verify they're being dismantled, and if that doesn't happen, engage with Israel on tearing down those facilities. No, I mean, unfettered by the U.S.'s intelligence assessment of Iran and not having a nuclear weapons program, unfettered by knowledge of what the IAEA currently does or the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty actually involves or international law or anything, really.
Well, ultimately, what is going to have to be done to resolve this permanently is for the Iranians themselves to decide that they will not acquire a nuclear weapon. And that's going to take a diplomatic outcome. And the military option, invasion, the land of Iran and occupying it in order to eradicate the nuclear program, that's too far from
That's interesting, because you're
Americans.
still taking on this framework that it's up to the Iranians to make this decision when, again, the intelligence estimate says they are not currently making a nuclear weapon. And President Obama continues with that framework, which in the end might be still dangerous. And it's the same framework as the GOP candidates, isn't it? And might that not box President Obama or the Republican candidates at the same time? President Obama is still singing from that same hymn sheet. He still has the same framework as the Republican Party.
His view, like the consensus view of the intelligence community, is that Iran has not decided to make a nuclear weapon, and that's a key argument. That's not something that's
right, but still
often
crippling
stated
sanctions
here.
And tightening the noose on what if there's no nuclear weapons program? Isn't that the problem, though? That framework still exists, and that's the same as the Republican Party.
Well, ultimately, the goal is a diplomatic outcome, and the president's pushing for that, and the Republican argument has been to minimize the diplomatic aspect of this, and that's where there's a key difference.
Joel Rubin, thank you very much.
Thank you.